I came across this trailer a while ago.
Yes.
And it caught me by surprise because I, as a kid growing up, remember the Vancouver Grizzlies.
Yeah.
And that franchise. And I always thought, whatever happened to Bryant Reeves? Because to me, I was like, they should have chosen Michael Finley. That's what I was like, oh, when I found out what happened. I was like, Stu Jackson, what are you doing? But what was really neat was I discovered this trailer, and it was for that reason, finding Big Country.
Yeah.
Where is he? And I started looking deeper, managed to find the director, started chatting a little bit from Vancouver, BC. So there's a great tie-in, and just looking at her bio and just corresponding via emails, sounds like this is something we had to do and reach out.
Of course.
So I'm pleased to be joined by both Tendo and I.
Yeah, we are pleased.
Jayme, director of Finding Big Country. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Pretty
doing
good.
Doing good.
You have
Thanks.
a great extensive list when it comes to, directing. You've had a couple short films that have done well for yourself. And I think you also won an award for this movie or this documentary on Bryant Reeves just recently at the Vancouver International Film Festival.
Yes. It was a crazy 2 weeks, and we won the Audience Choice Award and the Must See BC Award.
Wow.
There we go. Well, much respect to you for there. I have to ask you, I wanted to know why this subject? What drew you to this team? And for those who don't know, explain a little bit more about your background and how you kind of got to where you were with this documentary.
For sure. So, I grew up, born and raised in Vancouver. I was 7 when the team came to town, and I absolutely loved them. They were my gateway into dreaming. I wanted to be the first girl to play in the NBA. That didn't end up happening. I became a filmmaker, and it was always sort of my dream. It kind of shifted, and I always wanted to tell the story of the Vancouver Grizzlies. And during my research, I found that Big Country was the only player that no one had been able to contact. So I sort of made it my life's mission to be the first person to do that. So that's kind of how the genesis of the film and how the idea came about.
When did you start this process? Was this just a few years, and how did it eventually develop to what you have for today?
I'd say, again, dreaming about this since I was in film school at UBC, so over a decade of dreaming. I'd say about 3 years of really hard work, and only in the past year was when I got funding for the film. So it was 2 years of really pitching it by myself, and thankfully Story Hive got on board, and they're the reasons why this film was able to get made was with their support. So that's sort of the timeline. So a decade of dreaming, and then 3 years of really hard work.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
knowing that, was it in that time? Was there a point where you kind of got frustrated trying to find Big Country? Where was that? And where was that? And I guess that final point where you're like, we got him. This is unreal. Can you tell me from step by step in that 3 year process where you kind of were a little bit frustrated and then you finally broke through that wall?
I don't think, honestly, I don't think I was necessarily too frustrated at any point, because I was unsure of how to get, all I knew was that everyone knows that he's somewhere in Gans, but that's pretty much it. So whether or not I can even get him to agree to do the film or contact him, how am I going to do that? So I just started calling everyone. Thank goodness for Google. And I don't want to give too much away if you do want to watch the film, but essentially I found a reporter who, and it was the only article that seemed that he had spoken to Reeves. So I reached out to him. He gave me the contact information of 3 people. I contacted those 3 people, and then thankfully one of them gave me the contact information of so many people in Brian's life. So I just started calling and cold calling, and had 5 seconds to sell myself on the phone, and luckily it worked, and everyone was just super nice and willing to help me. So and then the trailer suggests this, but I do go to Oklahoma, and that's, I think, one of the things that a lot of reporters weren't doing, is that if you want to find him, you have to go to him. And that's something that Barry Trammell, the reporter, who's one of the main interviews, says in the trailer, and it's true.
That's interesting, considering that, we live in such a social media age. This guy is he like off the grid completely, or?
No, to be honest, he's not. I mean, he's off the grid to people he doesn't know. He's not off the grid to family, friends, and his friends. So he's not off the grid to his inner circle, I'd say. So how do you penetrate? Like, how do you get into that inner circle? So that was the question that I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, and it's especially if it's this idea that he didn't necessarily want to be found, but he just felt like the world of basketball was probably something he didn't want to be in anymore. That's what the idea I got from it.
Oh wait. So I guess he's still involved in the game of basketball through his kids, and that's I think how he's been able to sort of fill that void is through his kids and coaching his kids and watching his kids play. All his kids play basketball.
Right.
So it's not something that he misses anymore. Because he still has basketball in his life.
Okay, so he's not completely shunned it away, because it seemed like it was. You don't have to necessarily give too much away, but your chance with interacting with him, I'm sure there was stuff that he was very candid about off camera. But certain things about him seemed like as soon as he kind of fell off, for lack of a better term, off the basketball scope, the media scope, it just seemed like he just really shut things down. Or has he? Maybe I'll ask you this: has he stayed in touch with those in the basketball circles when it comes to the NBA, whether it be front office or former players?
No, not really anyone in the NBA. Definitely people from his college teammates he still keeps in touch with, but not so much his teammates from the Grizzlies.
Oh, so that may be the biggest disconnect there. So what could you speak on the what the locker room may have felt like? You would say toward the end of the Vancouver Grizzlies, like toward the end. I'm sure Big Country spoke to that in some form. Did he or did he not actually? I should probably be asking first.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess I think all the players that I spoke to who played for the Grizzlies were super candid about how much it sucked to lose. You can't really spin a positive on that.
No.
But Brian talks about losing it in the film and how it was hard. And like these are players that were the number one players in their college team. So for them to have to go through these losing spells like that was definitely hard. But one thing that I loved about Bryant and I learned about him is that he never asked for a trade while he was here. And there were so many players who did not want to come to Vancouver, who were biting their lips when they were called on draft day. But Bryant, he loved Vancouver. He still loves Vancouver. He's still so proud to be a Vancouver Grizzly. And one of my favorite things I learned about him was that he never asked for a trade and he didn't want out.
That's incredible.
I was going to say, cough, cough, Steve Francis, when you talk about players biting their lips, not wanting to come to Vancouver.
Exactly.
He's the biggest one.
Yeah.
Since you grew up as a Vancouver Grizzlies fan in the 6 seasons or 7 seasons they were around, what to you is the lasting legacy still in Vancouver? Because I know even in the trailer, people were like, "Oh, I vaguely remember the Grizzlies," right? And it seemed like it had a much bigger impact with you as opposed to it's hard to say general population, but in the people that you kind of show in the trailer, and I'm sure in the documentary as well, that they also were just like there's no remnants of them at Rogers Place right now. Arena.
So to that, I'd say it's interesting. There are no physical remnants here in Vancouver, but if you talk to anyone who grew up in Vancouver in the 90s, everyone has a memory about them. And I think that's why we've sold out 5 screenings already here in Vancouver. And so, which I think just speaks to the fact that, everyone, there are so many people who love the Grizzlies, who remember the Grizzlies, But I think in the trailer, it's true that a lot of people, and majority of the people I spoke to were like, what, who? But I think it's because there are no physical remnants, a lot of the people we spoke to were younger. So if there are no physical remnants, and now you're growing up here in Vancouver, you're never going to know that there's a team here. Or if you move to Vancouver after 2001, you would never know that there was a team here. No, in any sports bar, there are no photos of the Vancouver Grizzlies. It's like the oddest thing. So I'd say there are no physical remnants, but their legacy is definitely in the memories of those who grew up in Vancouver.
Of course.
And we're the keepers of all these memories. So it's been really cool to see so many Grizzlies fans come out from the woodworks. Like yesterday, there was just so many fans who, would come up to me after we had a screening at the Rio Theater in East Vancouver, and everyone would come up to me and they were sharing their Grizzlies memories, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so like it's in a way it's you've helped to create a time capsule of captured something that's more than just a static memory of the city of Vancouver, right? Like an emotion, a sort of a combination of just people, things, emotions, all in one film, but also just re-inviting that idea back. Because what I think is funny about or interesting about your film is the fact that now more than ever, like the NBA is such a big, franchise. It's watched world over. And the idea of bringing back the Vancouver Grizzlies gets people excited. I think it does get like a lot of Canadians excited about having another NBA franchise. Like if it were to be, they and the NBA has been toying out with the idea of expanding further west, toying with either Las Vegas or Seattle. And, people in Vancouver, I think with a film like this should be also thinking, hey, why not us too? I think Vancouver has a lot to offer.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely one of the goals of this film is to help, start the conversation going, start a movement. Vancouver is ready for an NBA team for sure.
Yeah.
Is there a groundswell? Like, are you seeing, because you've seen it in your movies. Obviously, if you've had all these screenings, they've been sold out. Won, I guess, Choice Award at the Vancouver International Film Festival, Best BC documentary. Just thinking about all that, have you started seeing, like, is this, like, what you're doing is just part of a grassroots movement to see if the Grizzlies can be revived?
I would like to think so, for sure. And it's been, the city's been buzzing about this film since, I guess, we had a slight marketing accident that kind of were like with our missing posters that we put up all over the city, and that sort of as soon as those posters hit, like the city started buzzing about this film, and then whenever we would drop a trailer or a teaser, everyone would get even more and more excited, and so I just think that, and I'm not sure, there's actually clips on YouTube and on our Instagram feed of our opening night, and everyone was decked out in Grizzlies gear. We had Al Murdoch, so the voice of the Vancouver Grizzlies. Nice. He came out and he introduced the film and myself, and even before the film started, we already got one standing ovation, and it felt like an NBA team, like an NBA game. So it was such a cool experience and a pretty crazy night. And I think again, it just shows, how much Vancouver is excited for a team, and we want it. We want our Grizzlies back.
So did any of the other Vancouver Grizzlies speak to the sort of like the big country thing, or more so talking about doing more, or I don't know, being more involved in like the Vancouver situation? Because you're saying Reeves loves Vancouver. He has it's a special place for him. But does Mike Bibby feel the same way? Maybe that's what I'm trying to ask in a polite way.
Yeah. For Mike, I only spoke to him on the phone a few times.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't remember if we got too much into it. I know that I know that it was hard in the beginning for sure when
Yeah.
he got drafted because he was far away from his family. I think even his cousin had to move up with him here, and at that time in the 90s, no one knew what Vancouver was. And I think the Olympics have really put Vancouver on the map as well, and it's definitely one of the cities that I think a lot of players would probably prefer to play in and live in compared to a lot of cities in the States.
Oh yeah.
So I think back then it was a head scratcher, and it was sort of like, okay, what's Vancouver? And I don't know if too many players were happy, but I think they ended up loving it. But at first, I do know that Mike said that it was, when he first got drafted, especially just because his family was so far away, that was difficult. And I mean, you have to remember that these guys were also super young coming into the league in their early 20s. So
Yeah.
for them to be away from family and to be in a new sort of cultural environment was also difficult.
And it's a foreign country, even though we share a lot of
share
traits
a border,
with the
but
United
it's
States.
Technically a different country.
I want to ask about, you've listed a couple of reasons as to perhaps the apprehension people don't know about Vancouver. I wanted to get your thoughts. Did the NBA, and I've heard David Stern say it's one of his regrets, Vancouver and Seattle, of relocating and not giving them an opportunity. But I think probably should phrase it like this: what went wrong? What would you say the tipping point? Was it these players didn't want to be there? Was it the structure within the organization because all the losing didn't really help? Like, what was basically the downfall of Vancouver Grizzlies, or the Grizzlies in Vancouver?
That's a very good question. It's super complicated. There's no one answer. There's no one reason. I will say that the next film that my producer, Michael Grand, and I are working on is now the feature-length documentary about the Vancouver Grizzlies and getting to the bottom of this. But yeah, there were multiple factors. The dollar was so low. Basketball was so new to, Vancouverites. No one knew what Vancouver was. The expansion draft rules that really kind of handcuffed Vancouver. And then, I think and then obviously like the lockout really hurt us. And Vancouver is that type of place where, all right, there's so many outdoor activities to do. So you're also competing with that. So that was something that hurt us when the lockout happened. So there's a bunch of factors. And then obviously, players who didn't want to come play for us. So, I don't think there's one thing that hurt us, but I think one of the main things that hurt us was probably the dollar being so low. So we're earning Canadian, having to pay these players in American dollars.
Oh, okay, so that was
okay, so there were all right. And I think now things are a little different. I would imagine the Raptors, or at least the NBA, have put provisions in to make things more equitable. I think since then.
I think now with all the TV
the
contracts,
TV,
it's a bit different, but they didn't have that back then.
Yeah, and I would imagine that at least that couldn't be a thing that could kill a team. Or I mean, that's no longer a barrier. At least we could cross that off the list if we're thinking of bringing back or having the Grizzlies back.
Kat?
Yeah.
We've talked to Nav, the super fan for the Raptors, and he says, Vancouver's a great place. He was there recently when the Raptors played an exhibition game with the Portland Trail Blazers. I don't know if you had a chance to be there, but even just kind of seeing the vibe, has it also, in those cases, the success of the Raptors, how big basketball is 20-plus years later in this nation, has that helped at all in terms of generating buzz here, and in particular Vancouver?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like whenever the Raptors are here, the game is completely sold out. I definitely think I mean, if you look at the Toronto Raptors, that's what could have been here in Vancouver, right? So it's sort of, it's interesting to look at it. The Raptors are super successful why can't we have that here in Vancouver? So it's great that the NBA comes here with the Raptors, but I think just the fact that we sell out every game whenever they're here just goes to show that there is an appetite, there is an audience, and there are fans who would support this 100%.
We appreciate you coming on. Thanks again so much. It's really interesting to hear from Vancouverite, just kind of getting the inner workings. Because out here in the prairies, it was a team I actually enjoyed watching. Comparing the two Canadian teams, and unfortunate to see what happened to Vancouver.
It got anyone in the West salivating, because you're thinking, well, Vancouver and then maybe Edmonton or Calgary, and then who knows, Winnipeg, and then it's all over. And I mean, who doesn't want to watch the NBA in Canada? I would love to just regularly go to an NBA game, and technically Vancouver is a lot closer to us than Toronto is. So, if Vancouver gets a team, that's a team I can come and watch, every so often, catch a odd game here and there.
Okay, Kat, I have to ask you this.
Yeah.
What you mentioned, you teased us a little bit with you're just working on a documentary. How far are you into that new feature-length documentary? And when are you anticipating to kind of get that out in the next year or two, or?
Yeah, no, great question. So we're still in early development, still sort of wrapping up Finding Big Country, but we're hitting the ground running with this next film. So give me at least a year or so, and hopefully this will be ready to go, and we'll be able to share this next story with everyone.
And for those who are still, salivating, wanting to know more about the Grizzlies, your documentary is officially online. Can you tell people where they can go in order to watch it?
For sure.
And really kind of get a grasp of the great work you've done?
For sure. So it's on Story Hive's YouTube channel. It's also on Daily Hive. We're actually hoping to go to Edmonton and Calgary at the end of November. So the film, so myself and my producer, Michael, will hopefully fly to Alberta at the end of November to do some screenings and actually like live Q&A. So hopefully that happens, because I would love to travel with the film as well. We're actually going to Oklahoma beginning of November to do some screenings in Oklahoma.
Fantastic.
Great.
And where can people find you? They want to find you, Story Hive. What's the best place to hit you up on, either Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff?
Twitter.
For sure. So, findingbigcountry.com has contact information, and Instagram is kjayme_films.
All right.
Perfect.
All right.
Well, thanks a lot, Kat. This is fantastic. I love the work you're
doing.
Thank
you so much.
This is incredible.
You bring
and
so
I'm
much
definitely
more.
excited. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what you're going to bring in for the next year or two once this full-length film comes on. Because I keep thinking of all the other stuff I've seen on videos, and I've been passionate about the Grizzlies. Like, what has happened to this team? Why did they leave? And it's really neat.
Exactly.
You know what, Kat? You've inspired me enough. Like I feel as though if ESPN were ever going to do a 30 for 30 on the Vancouver Grizzlies, I would hope that you were the first person they approached to direct it.
I hope so too. ESPN, if you're listening.
ESPN, if you're listening,
no, for sure.
get Kat. Give her control and let her take it. I feel like you'll definitely bring Vancouver into a new light, and the world will know about Vancouver after this.
All right, thanks a lot,
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.